Hello, my name's John. These are some of my Necromunda Orlocks, and you're watching Wargames, Models, and Other Hobbies. Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be running through the basics of how I painted my Necromunda Orlocks. I had a question about how I painted these, so I thought I'd do a little video running through the whole process. I'm not going to look at how I painted the skin, the heads, and then their accent colours. So for these guys, their accent colour is all red, but I'm going to do all of their basic uniforms and then run through that whole process. So I have one just here with just a white primer. I've also got my Orlock Cybermastiff here. I'm going to repost a quick video of how I painted this for anyone who wants to know as well. But for today, we're just going to be looking at the Orlock uniform. So, don't need many paints for this. So the whole process is some base colour, dry brush, some metallics, and then some washes. So for the main colours, I've got Rhinox Hide, Rakarth Flesh, Skavenblight Dinge, Agrax White for a few little bits of detail. I use the Rakarth Flesh for the dry brushing. I've then got some Ironbreaker for the metallics, and then Agrax Earthshade and Nuln Oil for the washes afterwards. So to start with, I'm going to be painting all the Rhinox Hide sections of this, and that's going to include the leather jacket, any of the belts, and the bag on this character's back. So, let's get started. So the whole purpose of this paint job that I did on my Orlocks was to have a nice neutral flat colour. The gangs were going to be distinguished with the accent colours. So in the case of my first Orlock gang, that is red, and then a few other different colours here and there just to bring out details and so on. But I wanted something quite easy to paint as well, that wasn't going to take a long time. So that's why I went for just a few of these colours rather than a lot of them. Now this particular Orlock is for my as yet incomplete Ash Waste gang. So if you want to see more about those, drop it in the comments. If you want to see any more of my Necromunda models, or you want any more guides on how I painted them, please drop it in the comments. So I'm going to take it out of my painting handle. And I'm just going to hold it. So normally when I'm painting my models, I'll start with the lowest level of the model, so that's generally the skin. But in this case, the only skin on this guy is the top of his head, so I'm not worrying about it for this one, and that's the reason why I chose this model, as it means that I'm not going to really change the way I normally paint things too much, just to show you how I painted these details. Right, this brush isn't the best as it keeps splitting, so let me grab another brush. Okay. What I will do for this video as well is I'll put timestamps in, so you can jump from each colour to the next, so you don't have to watch the whole video if you don't want to. Now, the reason why I start with a white base coat is because, as you can see with this arm, if I paint it thinly on, it gives some weathering before I've even got to that stage of the model, which is something I quite like. I'm aware that a lot of people prefer black primer, but I myself now prefer a white primer on pretty much everything that I work on. Now, I don't have to be too careful when I'm painting all the layers, but I don't want to go over the edges too much, because I want to make it as tidy as possible while I go through these different paints. And what I will do between each coat, I won't force dry this. I will use time to dry it rather than a hairdryer. So I'll stop the video recording between each coat to allow it to dry. So it's going to be real time in everything bar the paint drying. Now I want to try and get this to focus a little bit better for you as I do all of this. So I won't be painting the head or the weapon this time round. I'm just going to be doing the body and the armor plates. But yeah, in this case I'm starting with everything that's going to be brown. Normally, if I'd be doing this, I'd most likely be doing a little bit of batch painting as well. So as I let one miniature dry, I'll be painting another one. The way I did my previous Orlock gang, I did them in threes. So by the time I got round to each different colour, it had dried enough for me to get started on the next layer each time round, if that makes sense. I was concentrating then and I forgot what I was talking about. So last bit of brown is just on the chest there. Now I'm going to move around just to see if I've got everything. I think I have for what I'm looking to do. Yeah, so that is the Rhinox hide done, and I'm going to wait for a little bit before I then get on to the next paint. Okay, so the next stage is the Skavenblight dinge, and this is going to be gloves, shoulder pads, boots, and yeah, that's about it on this one. So start with the boots. And this is again all the kind of the boots, no kind of So this gives a secondary colour to this simple scheme, so defines certain details which you could do the same kind of similar brown or a different colour brown, but I quite like the different contrast in the colour using the Skavenblight Dinge grey. So it could kind of, rather than being leathers, it could be plastics, rubbers, that kind of thing. So I do like this scheme that I use for my Orlocks. I've used it on a few other models as well, but I feel it fits best with my Orlocks. And the thing I like about it is having things like these sashes, bandanas and that kind of thing. That allows you to pick a colour for the gang, so you get a bit of unity with the models themselves, but then some slight variation depending on which gang they're from. Let's just carefully do this. This is one of the things I like about white primer, is it shows you where you've missed painting. On black primer you don't necessarily see it. It doesn't always matter though, because the black hides it. So there's a pro to the black paint there. I've just always preferred, well, not always, now I always tend to use white primer. I used to use black primer a lot, but I found I don't get the same kind of blends with a black base than I do with a white base, but it's personal preference. This would still work on a black primer base, so don't feel that you have to do it with a white primer. Also, you can use slightly different colours as well. I wouldn't say that you have to use these at all. Just having the limited palette does make it a lot easier to work with, but again, entirely down to you when you're painting them. Now I think this is going to be my first painting video of 2025. Not sure how far into January it's going to be. Currently it is just before January. I am in that void between Christmas and New Year, and I'm hoping to try and get quite a few videos done during this time. I say quite a few, I'll probably end up only doing one or two, but I do have a list of ones I want to get done. Okay, so next job is the gloves. Now the thing with the gloves is you can treat them as fingerless gloves, but in this case, because this is an ash waste gang member, I'm going to paint the gloves completely so they are somewhat protected from the ash wastes. Now I really need to sit down and finish this gang, as I do have quite a few on the go that I need to finish. I tend to find I like to plan a gang out, a starting gang, and then I do like to then build it, paint it, and before I've even got to a finished point, I'll end up starting another gang. I have a list of gangs that I'm working on at varying stages of completion, but that's just the way my hobby goes. I do thoroughly enjoy starting new things. Okay. Careful not to hit the camera with my brush, as I've got it quite zoomed in at the moment. If there's any other videos you'd like to see me make, whether it's painting videos, conversion videos, anything like that, please drop it in the comments. And if you've got to this point in the video and you're not currently a subscriber, why don't you just go and hit that little button? And if you want to get notifications of whenever any of my videos come up, you can hit that little bell. Entirely up to you. I don't mind if you don't know. This is just another way I get my hobby done. Is video it while I go. Okay. I think that is all of the Skavenblight dinge. So let's clean my brush. Okay, so I've let it dry for a little bit. So as you can see, we've got those two colours on there. Next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to paint some of the Rakarth Flesh on the trousers. Okay, so I need to be a little bit careful now, because I don't want to go over the brown where it's being painted for the belt and other details. If I do go over it though, it doesn't matter, I can then just repaint over it. I'll take a little bit of time doing this, as this is the bit that starts neatening up any of the sections that I've overpainted. Now I'm not too worried if I don't get all the areas with the Rakarth Flesh, as I'm going to be using a wash over the top of this anyway. And what I'll probably do as well is on the tabard and the little arm bandage, the armband, I'm going to tidy that up with a bit of white, because I'm not sure yet what colour this gang's spot colour is going to be yet. My previous one was red. This might be a similar red to show how the factions close to each other, or it might be a completely different colour altogether. I'm not sure yet, I haven't quite decided. I quite like the idea of having a gang inside the hive that's connected to a gang outside the hive through whatever reason. Okay, so now I've done that Rakarth Flesh, I'm now going to get a dry brush and I'm going to do a little light dry brush over what I've done so far with Rakarth Flesh again. So I've taken most of it off this brush, and I'm just going to carefully go over the edges with this. I'll do this before I do the tidy up with the white, because I want that to be nice and crisp. So there we have that slight dry brush, nothing much, over the top of that. So that's the Rakarth Flesh done. So next job is tidy up the t-shirt and the armband and the tabard with some Agrax white, but I have just noticed I forgot to do the belt loops, so let's get the Rakarth Flesh out one more time. And lucky I saw that. Well, lucky or not, doesn't matter really, because I'll just repaint it if I missed it. So what I'm looking for is just that section there, and I want the top of the trousers there. Okay, yep, that's got it. Okay, let's get the Agrax white. So I'll start at the bottom and work my way up. So I'm just going to tidy up some of the edges of, oop, helpful on camera, apologies, the tabard. Oh, I've gone over. Let's get some water on that quickly. That's right. Okay. Tabards. Nice and easy t-shirt. I need to take a little bit more time with. Now at the moment, like I said, I don't know what colour this gang's going to be. So it might look a little bit odd with the white tabard and the white t-shirt. It might look quite good, and I might end up keeping it. We shall see. I quite like the idea of using a spot colour rather than just white. But we shall see. Okay, so that's the t-shirt done. Now let's get this armband sorted. I've picked up the brush that has a split in it, which means there's a little rogue bristle. Ah, that was a complete balls up. Should be using a smaller brush really. But I can't be bothered, to be honest. I tend to find when I'm painting, whichever brush I start with is normally the brush I use for the whole job, even if it's not necessarily the best. But that's just the way I paint. Okay, there we go. So I'm not going to really wait for that to dry. I'm just going to get onto the metallics now. So this is the Ironbreaker that I'm going to use for for the metallics, and there's quite a few on this dotted around. So let's get started. I will start on the chain and the belt. So there is the skull on the front of the belt. There we go. Then we have the chain. And once I've painted these, I'm going to have to let them dry thoroughly before I put the washes on them, because I don't want any bleed of the metallic onto any of the other colours. So that is that chain done. The next thing I'm going to do is look for all of the little belt loops and buckles and little panels dotted around. So we got that one just there. We then have this on the corner of the bag. The Orlocks have a lot of these little details, and you don't have to use this metallic. You can use any kind of metallic that you want, but I find with the washes that I use, starting with a lighter metallic, it knocks it back just the right amount. If you're using something that's darker, it might come across as really quite dark on the model. I'm not going to worry about anything on the boots. Let's have a look on the front. So we've got something just down here. So having a look at that. There we go. We then have one on the other side just here. There we go. There's a little buckle on the belt that goes across the front of this guy. Do the silver end to the belt, and then gonna have to go over that with a bit of brown. There's a bit too much on there. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll go over that with a bit of brown in a second. The next bit that I need to do are the knuckles on the gloves. I'm sorry, that went off camera. Apologies when it goes off camera. I look at the model while I'm painting, not at my camera, so I do lose a sense of what's being filmed. I need to sort that out somehow. Next bit is going to be on these shoulder pads. The whole spiked section along here is going to be metallic. Not sure what colour I'm going to paint the weapons yet on this one. I'll probably wait until I've painted the rest of this gang, because I quite like tying the colour of the weapons in with all of them, and without knowing exactly what colour I'm doing for their accent colour, I'll leave the weapons for now. My old gang I did just as a gunmetal, but I might do something slightly different with this one. Okay, let's just have a look. Oh, there's that. That's something just there. As you can see, not using many colours at all for this. Just get a little touch of the Rhinox hide for tidying up that belt. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is let that thoroughly dry before I go on to the washes. But let's have a quick look before I do that. So we've just got our simple colours. We've got our Rhinox hide for all of the brown. We've got the Skavenblight dinge for the greys. Some Rakarth Flesh for the trousers and a dry brush over everything, and then tidied up a few details with the white, and then we've got that Ironbreaker for all the silver parts. So let's let that dry before we jump on to the next stage. Okay, so now that this has dried, I'm going to first use some Agrax Earthshade, and I'm going to apply that to various parts of the model. So I'm going to start with applying it to anywhere which I painted brown or grey, and I want to be quite liberal with this, so this is going to help increase any difference in coloration from the light dry brushing that I did. I want to get this over all of the details. So this gives a little bit of depth to the model, but then I'll apply the Nuln Oil over the top of this to knock it back slightly. And now I've got to this stage, I'm going to start on the boots, and once I've kind of done the boots and it's started to dry, I'll do the trousers as well. So it's pretty much the whole model gets Agrax Earthshade on it. The key thing is not to let it pull too much on the trousers compared to other areas of the model. And I don't really want to get too much of it on any of the silver. It doesn't matter if I do though, but I want to try and avoid that slightly. And you'll notice I'm not really getting any all over the white. Doesn't matter if it goes over the edges slightly. Okay, have I got everywhere? I think I have. So the next step is let that dry. So the Agrax Earthshade has now dried, giving us a really nice finish all over. Now the next step is I'm going to wash the whole thing, including the metallics, with Nuln Oil. So this knocks back a bit of the colour. You don't have to do it, but I kind of like the finish that it gives. So what I'm going to do is just start at the bottom and work my way up. Some places I won't put as much, other places I'll go quite heavy. But again, it's down to personal preference how much you kind of put in place. The key thing is making sure that you've got it on your metallics as well. helps if I have it on the screen. So I'm not going to worry if I go over some of these white sections at the moment. That will eventually have colour, but until I choose what colour that is for this gang, I'm not going to worry too much. Likewise with the head, that's something that's going to get painted later on. I might give, this guy's got a slight kind of mohawk under his mask, well, a flat mohawk. I might give him a bit of coloured hair, not sure yet. But yeah, really like this simple technique of block colours and then a wash. It's not overly complicated. You can do it with a limited palette, or you can have a more wide-ranging palette that you cover over at the end. But I think for these Orlocks, for these Orlocks, it works quite nicely having a limited palette. Just gotta make sure I get every bit. Okay, that is all of the hands done, all of the body. Let's make sure that's done there. Okay, right, now I've just got to let that dry. Okay, and there we have it. There is the Orlock painted, obviously, apart from the head weapon and the colour on the tabard or anything. Let's hold it up against one of the other ones. You will see this one is slightly darker on the brown, so you don't have to put the Nuln Oil over everything, but I do like the way that it kind of comes across. And for the gang that I want to do for the ash wastes with the Orlocks, that slightly darker colour scheme is something that I really like. So like I said at the beginning of the video, I will put a link to my re-release video on painting my Cyber Mastiff. It's just a quick video, it's just about a minute long, goes through all the processes. If you like this video, please hit a like. If you want any more videos like this, drop a comment and give some suggestions. I'll put some images of my Orlocks at the end of the video, just to give you an idea of what it looks like when you paint them up. So that's it. All I can say is thank you so much for tuning in. My name's John, and you've been watching War Games, Models, and Other Hobbies.